Welcome back to Klepper's Corner. Today in history. May 28th is one of those dates where humanity looks at battlefields, temples, treaties, fleets, and breaking news and asks the same question: who put people in charge of people? So on May 28th, 585 BC, Lydia under King Alyattes and Media under King Cyaxares were doing what empires do best: turning a border dispute into a 5-year group project with swords. Then, during the Battle of the Eclipse, the sun disappeared. Not metaphorically, not in the "our democracy is in darkness" cable news way, but actually vanished behind a solar eclipse over the Halys River. Soldiers who had been committed to stabbing strangers suddenly looked up and decided maybe the universe had notes. That is one of history's better ceasefires. No summit, no mediator with a lanyard, just the sky hitting the dimmer switch. The irony is that Thales of Miletus may have predicted the eclipse. So while armies read astronomy as divine anger, one guy was quietly proving the cosmos had a schedule. The result was a truce, a border, and a royal marriage. Because nothing says we survive celestial terror like making your children handle the merger. Nearly 2,000 years later, on May 28, 1453, Constantinople gathered inside Hagia Sophia for the final Christian liturgy before the Ottoman conquest. Emperor Constantine XI and his terrified people prayed under the dome while cannons waited outside the walls. The next day, the city fell. The last remnant of the Roman Empire died, and the cathedral became a mosque. Hagia Sophia outlived the rulers who claimed it, making it less a building than a marble witness whispering, "I have seen your empires, and you all overestimate the lease." If May 28th has a specialty, it is powerful people launching enormous plans that immediately reveal they should have read the instructions. In 1588, King Philip II of Spain sent the Spanish Armada from Lisbon to overthrow Queen Elizabeth I and restore Catholic rule in England. It was called the Great and Most Fortunate Navy, which is the kind of branding that makes fate quietly sharpen a knife. The fleet was huge: ships, soldiers, sailors, priests, and enough imperial confidence to require its own tugboat. But it took 3 days just to leave port, foreshadowing the problem. Spain had built a floating cathedral of ambition and expected it to maneuver like a jet ski. In 1754, young George Washington wandered into the Ohio Valley and helped light the fuse on the French and Indian War at Jumonville Glen. He was 22, wet, ambitious, underinformed, and armed, a combination that has never improved a meeting. Washington's men ambushed a French party. Then Mingo leader Tanacharison turned the skirmish into a diplomatic catastrophe by killing Ensign Jumonville, pushing Britain and France toward a global war. That war helped bankrupt Britain, create colonial taxes, and eventually stir the American Revolution. So the United States owes part of its origin story to a drenched young Washington having the situational awareness of a raccoon in a pantry. Then, in 1905, Tsar Nicholas II sent the Russian Baltic Fleet on an 18,000 nautical mile voyage to fight Japan, and the trip became a dark slapstick opera. Russian sailors fired at British fishing trawlers. Phantom enemies appeared everywhere, and everyone arrived exhausted just in time for Admiral Togo Heihachiro to destroy them at Tsushima. Empire is easy to announce and very hard to parallel park. May 28th also gives us the darker pattern where governments discover that oppression sounds more respectable once you put it on official letterhead. In 1802, Louis Del Grey and his followers in Guadeloupe faced Napoleon's troops as France moved to restore slavery in the Caribbean. The French Revolution had promised liberty, equality, and fraternity, then apparently added an asterisk reading, "Offer not valid in colonies." Surrounded at Matuba, Del Grey and hundreds of rebels chose death over enslavement, igniting gunpowder as French soldiers closed in. It is horrifying, but brutally clear. When an empire says freedom is negotiable, the people facing chains understand the contract better than the lawyers. In 1830, President Andrew Jackson signed the Indian Removal Act, wrapping forced displacement in the soft language of protection and philanthropy. That is the bureaucratic genius of American cruelty. You can steal land, break treaties, and drive families westward as long as the announcement sounds like a helpful relocation package. Davy Crockett opposed the bill, calling it wicked and unjust, and paid politically because moral clarity often polls badly among people waiting to grab somebody else's farm. Then, in 1871, the Paris Commune fell after Bloody Week, when the French government crushed a radical working-class experiment with artillery, executions, and mass arrests. The communards tried to remake the city. Versailles answered by proving the state can defend order by turning neighborhoods into target practice. These stories rhyme. Authority commits the violence, names itself civilization, then asks the victims to appreciate the paperwork. Segment 4, and institutions that outlive their founders. Not everything on May 28th is a battlefield. Sometimes history changes costume and shows up as an organization, a club, or a company with a complicated future. In 1892, John Muir organized the Sierra Club in San Francisco, which is funny because Muir loved wilderness so much he had to go into a city and form a committee to protect it. That is modern environmentalism in one image, a guy defending glaciers with bylaws. The Sierra Club helped shift the American view of nature from how fast can we cut it down toward maybe the canyon does not need to become a receipt. In 1937, Nazi Germany founded Volkswagen around Adolf Hitler's dream of a people's car. The actual people did not get their cars before the war. They got propaganda, stamp books, and the familiar authoritarian sales pitch. Save for the future while the state turns the factory toward war. After 1945, Volkswagen became a global giant, creating one of history's strangest brand makeovers. A vehicle imagined by fascist planners, later becoming a flower-painted symbol of hippie counterculture. That is not redemption by itself, but it is irony with a sunroof. Then, in 1961, Peter Benenson's article, The Forgotten Prisoners, launched Amnesty International, turning outrage over jailed dissidents into a global letter-writing movement. Dictators expected armies and coups. Instead, they got mailbags full of strangers saying, "We know what you did, and we have stamps." Institutions can preserve forests, launder reputations, or pry open prison doors. The question is, who gets stuck underneath them when they start moving? Segment 5, and the modern age of panic buttons. By the late 20th century, May 28th shifts from empires marching in formation to systems embarrassing themselves in public. In 1987, 19-year-old Matthias Rust flew a rented Cessna from Finland into Soviet airspace and landed near Red Square, humiliating one of the most militarized states on Earth. The Soviet Union had radar, jets, missiles, uniforms, and men with enough medals to sink a canoe. And still, a teenager with about 50 hours of flight experience slipped through like he was delivering a pizza to the Cold War. The military tracked him, but nobody wanted to be the officer who shot down a civilian plane after the Korean Airlines disaster. So the system did what large systems do in crisis. It passed responsibility around until the problem parked near St. Basil's Cathedral. Rust thought he was building an imaginary bridge for peace. Instead, he gave Mikhail Gorbachev a real excuse to purge hardliners resisting reform. In 1998, Pakistan answered India's nuclear tests by detonating 5 bombs in the Chagai Hills, matching India's number like the world's most terrifying scoreboard. The logic was stability through terror, which is the sort of phrase humans invent when extinction needs better branding. And in 2016, the shooting of Harambe at the Cincinnati Zoo became a global internet event, turning a tragic emergency into memes, arguments, ballot jokes, and digital folklore. Modern power is what everyone watches, shares, distorts, and turns into a symbol before the facts finish loading. May 28th did not eliminate absurdity. It gave absurdity broadband. In conclusion, May 28th has the lights flickering, eclipses ending wars, sacred buildings outlasting empires, fleets getting lost in their own ambition, governments disguising cruelty as policy, institutions becoming larger than their founders, and one teenager landing a Cessna inside the confidence gap of a superpower. Humanity learns just enough to make the next disaster more professionally managed.